One of the things that I picked up on when I've done all of my VOD research and VOD reviewing for my writing this year is how stacked the League Champions Korea, the league that's over in Korea, imagine that, how that scene is stacked in terms of top lane talent in this particular year. Most of us, I think, are familiar with the notion, or rather, like the trend that is within Europe of how that region produces a lot of really good mid lane talent. Okay, let's think of some of the great Western mids of maybe all time, or at least a very recent memory. You have talent like Xpeke, you have Froggen. There's Incarnation, who is now playing over in NA. You have Bjergsen, also over in NA. He's considered probably maybe the best player in the West at some points in time. Trying to think of other talents. My brain went to Ocelot, and that doesn't sound right. He's definitely notable, but maybe I don't think as a player per se, more as like a personality. Perksy right now in the EU LCS, and you also have Fabiven, who came up last year from the Challenger Series. He turned out to be very good. He had great international performances for his team. Europe produces a lot of produces a lot of really strong mid lane talents, and while Korea does also produce like a lot of its own talent, if you think some of the best players of all time, it's heavily a dominated Korean list, and especially is skewed in that sense just because it has the best player of all time, Faker, which has less to do about like the region itself, and that's more just Faker being an anomaly within that system. But one thing that I've noticed in this season, again, is the top lane talent pool. And Korea is no stranger to, again, making great talent. A lot of the best players are, in fact, Korean. But in terms of top lane, you got some really historic names from that region. You think of Reaper, Mach Noon, Flame. There are plenty of talents from the top lane that have really grown, and there's a lot of them in this particular season. So if you go down the list of the teams in LCK, you got Rox, Jin Air, KT Rolster, SK Telecom, and Samsung. Okay, the 5 best teams. They all probably have arguably the 5 best top laners within the region, although they think there is some debate. And then even outside of that, you have some pretty stellar talent as well in Longju, in... Ooh, wait, who is 6th place? CJ, actually. CJ's been okay this year. I'm trying to remember the other teams. Afrika Freaks, sorta, kinda. Spenu and Kongdu. I feel like Spenu and Kongdu are the exceptions to the rule, although I think that Hippo, and I can't even remember the other guy's name, unfortunately. I think there's a Roach. I think there's Roach in there. I can't remember if Kongdu has like 2 top laners or not. I haven't kept up too well with like the history of the teams, and haven't, they're fodder. They're point fodder as it is right now. It's sad to say. But as far as the rest of the other 8 teams in LCK goes, each one of them has some like really strong top laners. So for the Afrika Freaks, you have Ixu. He's been a reliable tank player throughout most of the split. Well, and there's actually a common element among them that I'll explore in a moment. But Ixu has been pretty well for the team. He's been a reliable front line for Snowflower and Songyun to have their damage sources, to get that safety zone for them, and to create that space, as well as having some pretty decent teleport play. On Longju, you have Expression, who most people didn't think that he'd play at the start of the season, but as he's come on up and played, he's shown massive improvements from the last times that we saw him, and he's actually been really good. I think his mage play in particular was really good. He had a fairly decent Lissandra at the start of the season, and then the other top laner, the one that we all expected to see a lot of, was Flame himself. He's coming back from China and LGD. He's playing in Korea again. And he had a slower start to the season, and actually sometimes we would look at some of the games that Longju played early on and be like, okay, so Expression is on rise, and he's building up a huge farm advantage by slowly farming the lane into the late game. Why isn't this Flame? Those kind of jokes. It's like Expression, not to say he's the new Flame, but he's sort of like playing as people would expect Flame to do. But I feel like both those players in Longju are a little marred, though, by the fact that Longju itself just is a bit of a mess right now. It's not performing too well altogether, and the macro and the shot calling is like all over the place on that team. So, but those two have like individually shown that they are capable of having great teleport flanks, of creating really good advantages in lane, setting up ganks for their squad. Flame has kind of, as Expression has gone down, Flame has sort of picked it up as the season's gone on, in my personal opinion, in terms of individual performance. Again, trying to, again, they performed well, but the Longju as a structure and as a team isn't working. On Samsung, you have Kuve, who has been fairly well-rounded, actually, in this split. He's improved massively from his Rek'Sai top lane shenanigans last year. He's been doing a lot of solo queue. His rank has gone way up. I know it was pretty high at the start of the season. I don't know what it is at right now. But, he's, again, kind of been a really reliable tank gauge, but he's also been really good in the split push. His gangplank has been okay at times for the team. And he's actually gotten a lot of, I think he's gotten like some 1v1s on some really impressive, like on, top laners that we really associate with dueling. I think Duke was one of them. He's beaten him in lane a few times. Maybe it was, maybe someday as well, but that could be a result of the team. I have to look at all my notes again, but Kuve's been massively strong. Then, let's see, moving past Kuve, Untara and CJ, now, he's stepping into the shoes of Shy. We've considered Shy to be a really good player, but, he's getting fairly old into his career now, and it's time for him to step on away, and he's doing that for CJ right now. And Untara has really actually been, quite reliable in this season, and someone like Kuve, a bit of a surprise in terms of performance, and again, he's been able to kind of keep up with these other notorious split pushers on the other teams and been able to hold his own in the 1v1s. I think, and Kuve's teleports I think have been on point throughout most of the season. I think his Lissandra play in particular was probably some of the best Lissandra play that I've seen in Korea at the start when people were playing her in top lane. Right now, the thing with top lane is that it seems to be slowly moving towards just like a tank top lane. You have buffs to Maokai coming in, you got nerfs to Fiora and a couple other split pushers. So I'm kind of sad to see the carry top laners kind of go, but you still see them every now and then. So, who knows where that meta is going. I hope that the aggressive style top laner carries just because it opens up more diversity for the comps. And as well as that these players really shine in an element. Although, again, tank players have been really massive. You have... After that, we've gone over CJ. I've been over Frika, right? Ixu? Yeah, I've been over him. He's been surprising. Been over Samsung. Okay, so now it's just generic KT, SKT, and Rox. That's the ones left. Okay, so SKT, they picked up Duke. Now, he's coming in to try and fill in the spot that Marin left after Marin left for the team. That Marin left after Marin left for the team. This is why we write and do editing, boys, so we don't get repetition like that. The problem with Duke coming in originally for SK Telecom that I kind of had in the back of my mind was that Marin was the shot caller for the team, and Duke doesn't shot call. He's very quiet in terms of the comms. He doesn't have the same comm presence, and I don't know if Koma is trying to groom Duke into a new shot calling role, or if he's getting someone else to do the comms. I think from what I remember, Faker might be doing some of it. Makes sense. He's the longest. He's the most veteran and seasoned player on the team. There we go again with some repetition. He's the most seasoned player on the team. Wolf and Bang being a little, coming in a little bit after him, or maybe around as long, but they didn't have as much success until Faker came on in and played with their team. Blank is completely new in this season. He might have played for a team before. You can tell how well I researched this. But no, I'm fairly sure he's a rookie. And then Duke, we've seen him. He's had incredible single carry performances, and the fact that he won the MVP award while on Naj and EM Fire in summer, while that team didn't have a good record at all, but he was such an integral part of their wins so consistently that, he accrued the most MVP points. So, that was a test to his individual skill. And while he's had his ups and downs this season for SK Telecom, namely just because, again, he's not Marin, so he's not having that shot call role based around him. Sometimes, early on in the season, this has gotten a little better over time, is he'd overextend in the split push. If his team got behind, he'd just go automatic split push mode, and he'd get caught out a lot for that because because Bengi wasn't getting wards down for him like that we saw for Marin last year. So, but Duke has been kind of more pretty reliable in that sense. He's had some excellent 1v1s, and when the team does get ahead, his split push is pretty dominating. He's had some pretty cool duels. The biggest area where he lacks on that these other top laners I've so far described don't is the teleport play. I think Kuve, maybe Untara. No, CJ's had a couple wacky teleports recently. Definitely Kuve. and sometimes Ixu. Sometimes Ixu and Kuve. Now these are on they are on teams that have a worse record than SKT overall, but they've had better teleport play. Heck, even Expression, at least at the start of the season for Longju, has had better teleport play than Duke has. With Duke, it's sort of a hit or miss thing. Either it's going to be really good, it's just exactly what the team needs, or it's going to be pretty bad and it's going to be way off in terms of where he needs to be, the timing of it, and it just kind of comes with Duke not being actively looking for the shot call. He's got to wait for someone else to call it on in, and SKT is still developing that synergy. Again, it has improved over time though. So okay, going past Duke, let's talk about Trace first. I know Jenner's in second place. And a lot of that has to do with Trace. Trace has probably had the widest champion pool of all the top laners in Korea. He's played Morgana top, he's played Lissandra top, he's played Graves tops, he's played a Nautilus recently. His Gangplank is still banned against him despite Gangplank going through some nerfs, although he still seems to have a fairly occasional ban rate within Korea. I mentioned Lissandra. I think he's played Poppy, and I think most top laners have played Poppy, and that's something I'll get to in a moment. He's played a huge number of champions in the season. I should have looked up and found what that number actually is. But, again, when I mentioned a Morgana top, that's a fairly wacky pick. Trace has been a huge carry force in the game, and he's been almost impossible to gank. You can just kind of see him understanding that the opponent's going to be looking for me. I need to be playing passive right here. I'm going to be playing really safe. I'm just going to be farming up all my late game carries, burn through the late game. The one thing I don't like what that Jenner is doing, although it is still working, is the fact that they are pushing Trace solely onto Nautilus. He's played almost nothing but Nautilus this past 2 weeks about. So it's something that I know Trace is a really good carry force, and I want to see him have more of that damage role on the team. But again, top lane meta seems to be somewhat shifting over to these very strong tanks as the high damage split pushers, Fiora. I can't even think of any other one, really. Gangplank, there you go. As they're getting nerfed, then that just automatically makes the tanks better because they're not being nerfed. Although Nautilus has received some slight nerfs. Poppy's about to get some nerfs. Maokai got buffed, though, in a very huge way. So, or we might see Maokai's support. That's some talk up in the air concerning that particular champion. So, Trace has been probably, again, one of them. You could maybe make, I think there's a good argument to make that Trace is the best top laner individually in the LCK, just for how much of an impact that he has on his team. However, I feel that we see a lot more from other top laners, and there's reasons why I would give it to others. And let's move on to those others while we're at it. So, KT Rolster has Someday, and we all pretty much know who Someday is. Now, he did have a massive... Not massive. He underperformed a little bit at the 2015 Worlds. He didn't have as much impact as he did, but when he came right back on, he was that monstrous carry force that he had. Early on in the season, it was the KT Rolster series against the Rocks Tigers, about week 2 or week 3, I want to say. And Someday played Gnar, and that's a champion that we don't see too often. It was sort of an offhand kind of a pick. It's still a good pick. It's always going to be those reliable sort of picks that you can just pull out, but there's other champions that just accomplish, the fill-in better niches than Gnar does. But Someday would go on, and he had a massive game on that champion. There was about 31 kills for KT Rolster in that game. Someday participated in all but one of those kills. And that is rather insane for a top laner. And he had some just sick plays and sick ultimates throughout that particular series on Gnar. And the thing with Someday as well is that it seems no matter how much you try and gank him, shut him down, he just always is still relevant in the game. You might as well not invest into shutting him down early, because it's just not going to work. You're better off almost taking out Arrow and Fly than investing a lot into Someday. And I think it was Longju's second game against KT Rolster, the second match that they had in the season, where Someday was on Gangplank. I think it was Gangplank. And they ganked him 4 times in the first 12 minutes and killed him every single time and took his tower. So, he's falling behind in CS. Oh, actually, no. He wasn't even falling behind in CS. He was getting, non-stop camped by Chaser, I think it was, for... Yeah, I think it was Chaser and Flame. That was the combo that he was up against. He was non-stop being dove by those guys, or set far behind. He was still even in goal with Flame through all those dives. And then once Longju's slowed down at a point, now this is where I have to hold some criticism along you here, because they like went for a teleport play in the middle of the game, and then that didn't work out, and so they were immediately like, oh crap, that backfired, so let's not do anything else, when that's what they needed to do. They shut down Sunday's gangplank. You're working on a timer here. If you just let him farm and get back into the game, it's not going to go well for you. But that's what they did. They let Sunday farm back into the game, and suddenly this Sunday, he had been camped throughout the first 15 minutes, 12 minutes of the game, and he actually got huge CS lead over Flame. Like, he even, like, achieved the Flame Horizon over Flame. You know, that's the 100 CS lead. There might be some context that I am missing as far as that particular reference goes, but he massively out-farmed Flame despite getting all the jungle attention focused onto him, against him, in the early game. It was absolutely unreal to see that kind of a performance, and again, we've seen that time and time again, where Sunday just shows up and he still has the damage sources. And he's done some very interesting, like, introductions. He brought Rammus into the meta for a bit of short time. Europe's down some European teams, maybe some NA teams, I can't remember off the top of my head, like, still play Rammus, you know, to this day, because Sunday used it against, Jennair, when Jennair drafted the triple AD composition, and then he's just like, you can't kill me. Nah. So, I mean, he's got a very wide champion pool. He's brought some champions in the meta, and he's just been an absolute monster in this particular season. I think that you can make an argument that he is, like, the best top laner, just because, like, if it comes down to Sunday, like, he can do it for the team. Like, that's something that he can just straight up do. Following Sunday is Smeb, who I personally think is the best top laner in the world. He's on... I mean, this is kind of a bit of a cop-out in a way, though. He's on the best team in the world, but he also makes that team run. He's the shot caller for the team, and the team is so decisive together. You know, there's a very good team atmosphere in there. But Smeb's own individual play has been pretty solid as well. However, I feel like, unlike Sunday, you can invest some resources and shut down Smeb. And Smeb also has a tendency to just go a little too hard in terms of diving the enemy team. He gives us some kills occasionally, and that's not entirely too bad. Like, Rocks sort of like take these advantages. They're like, we're going to make this play, we're going to derive advantage, you're going to get something back from it, but we're going to make sure our advantage is better than your advantage. That's how I kind of feel Rocks Tigers works in some degree. But, you know, Smeb orchestrates pretty much everything of the Tigers. He's got the best teleport plays, he's been able to keep up with all the adapting champion pools. When he gets a little hubris, I think that's the Tigers in general. They have so much fun, and you're just like, hey, we always win, so let's like push our limits and see what we can really get away with. And so that kind of results in them, you know, in things going back on them a little bit and backfiring. But, you know, if they focus on it and switch it up, they immediately do it on in. And like Sunday, Smeb's able to bring in like these random ass pocket picks sometimes, like the Cannon Top that he did, for example. That's a pick that he's used to some great effect against both KT Rolster and SKT actually. The one thing, I think his gameplay is a little, like, worse than others. His barrel chains and his barrel combos just aren't as good as someone like Trace's or Somedays, in my opinion, but his ultimate use with it has been pretty good. Maybe one of the best Gangplank ultimates that we've seen. In his first game, it was incredibly solid on that one. He hasn't had Gangplank a whole lot, but whenever he does get it, it just seems like his barrels aren't hitting the targets that they need to, whereas someone like Trace or Someday is going to be hitting those. So that's like going through the entire top lane talent pool of the region. Smeb's like the orchestrating mastermind shot caller. He's kind of like Marin. I mean, you know, that's like a bit of a it's an appropriate comparison. They were rivals in a sense throughout most of 2015, just at an individual position. They're both top lane shot callers for their teams, who had excellent macro play. And that's one thing I'm kind of really sad about now that Marin has left SK Telecom, because I want to see Rocks Tigers with Peanut versus SK Telecom with Marin. I think that would be like one of the most hyped series and potential matchups ever, and I might do an article on that at some point in time. But one thing that these top laners all have in common is that, you know, they're embracing of Poppy. Poppy is like one of the, like, it's almost like a staple pick for these top laners, and most of their Poppies, like, on average, are like probably some of the best in the world. Which is rather insane. The flanks, the team fighting, it's all been rather insane. Now, that being said, Poppy is also strong as a champion in terms of her kit, in terms of the numbers attached to that kit, but just like the individual play from these players as well has been largely solid. I think Duke might like had a couple of like glaring misplays on it. He got soloed by a Tom Kench, but I mean Tom Kench is actually a surprisingly good duelist, at least before his nerfs came on in. But, you know, Poppy just seems to be the champion that these guys can always go to, and is going to be incredibly good. and you know they all of them are really good, are fairly consistent with their ultimate uses in team fights for the stasis knockup. Again, though, I think Smeb's Poppy might be the best of them all. He's done some crazy stuff like winning 2v3s with Kuro backing him up. Kuve had he was playing Poppy in the first Samsung and Longju series in Game 2 when Longju was trying to siege down the middle of Inhibitor, and it was like a 3v5 situation. It was Kuve and I want to say Stitch, maybe it was Core JJ. I don't know which AD carry Samsung was running at the time. That they were able to hold on, and it was not just through Kuve, Kuve. He had a massive performance. It was pretty awesome. So that's just one thing I wanted to bring on up as well, because top laner is something that it's a very fun position to be watching. It's something I've appreciated more as I've watched Korea regularly this season, just because of some of the crazy stuff that these top laners can do. And I feel like some of the other there are some Western top laners that deserve shoutouts. Cabochard, Odoamne, and I'm trying to think of the other European top laners. Vizicachi, there we go. Vizicachi has had a really good season for his team. These guys are really well rounded. They can play the tank style. They can play the split push carry style. They're just ultimately really solid top laners. In North America, sort of like Huni. Darshan is up there. He is one of the best top laners in that region, but he's a very one-dimensional player, and CLG is a very one-dimensional team. So I'm really reluctant to give it to him, whereas Huni can kind of play everything, and he just sort of gets away with playing whatever that he wants. It'll be interesting to see how Huni fares up in international competition this particular year with Immortal's coaching staff behind him. I don't think it's going to go so well. Again, that's kind of what we're speculating. NA is a fairly weaker region this year. No one in NA can challenge Immortals, and it's they have a really good system that no one in NA can beat because they don't have the strong enough players to beat it. Maybe there's a case for Cloud9 doing it. We've seen CLG take a game off of Immortals, but I don't think that CLG would beat them in a best of 5. That's just me personally. Maybe I'm wrong. But that's my little thought video for the day. I was going to get this up a little earlier, but I had some issues with home electricity and all that stuff. So let me know what you think about your own list of some top laners. I know there's some top laners in Taiwan and China that I haven't talked about. Those are two regions I don't keep up with, so I can't really speak on the matter. But it seems to me like Korea as having a sort of just the rise of unexpectedly really good top lane talent this year, and it's something that's very exciting for me, and it's a very special treat to watch. So anyway, thank you guys for tuning in this video. I'll be streaming a little later tonight, so come on in and join me.